have Arthur Black.
I'm not the best organized guy in the world. So when I got this call in the morning from a voice I recognized saying, "Would you introduce Bruce Hyer? He's going to speak in the morning." And I said, "Sure, Elizabeth, I'd be glad to." I got the call yesterday, but I assumed she was talking about Sunday morning. So I'd like to give you my introduction to Bruce Hyer, who I'm sure you're going to enjoy. I've known and watched and admired Bruce for 30 years, and if I had to make a prediction about the greening of Canada, it would be that the next verdant outbreak to appear on the electoral map will be a swatch of boreal forest green emanating outward from Thunder Bay, the seat of Bruce's riding. Bruce Hyer was born on August 6, 1946 in Hartford, Connecticut. Now, if he'd waited 8 more years, he could have gone to the same daycare as another Hartford, Connecticut kitty by the name of Elizabeth May, who would live just a few blocks away. Like Elizabeth, Bruce saw the Northern Lights and moved to Canada. To Thunder Bay, in fact, which is where I met him a few decades ago. He was running an outfitter's store and getting his feet wet, or frostbitten actually, in northwestern Ontario politics. Bruce Hyer was an ecologist, a biologist, and a small business person before first being elected Member of Parliament for Thunder Bay Superior North in 2008. Re-elected in 2011, he currently sits as an independent MP in the House of Commons, desk to desk with Elizabeth May, which is symbolically fitting because they are in sync in terms of core beliefs and values. An avid conservationist, the ecotourism operator, and former bush pilot, received a Master of Science degree in forestry from Lakehead University in 1997. He's a good guy and a fine speaker, as you will discover tomorrow morning. I want to thank you very much for the warm welcome. What a treat to be here with all of you here in the United States of America. Technically, geographically, if the 49th parallel is your guide, check it out on a map. Check it out by walking down to Sidney Spit. Canada's southern border, the 49th parallel, runs straight as a Sid Crosby slap shot from east of Winnipeg, across the bottom of Manitoba, Saskatchewan, British Columbia, until it hits Puget Sound. And oops, what's that? There's Vancouver Island's perky little butt poking into Homeland Security. Sorry about that, America. Fact is, we Canadians have been taking various liberties with the famous 49th for some time now. I mean, once you get east of the Great Lakes, there's a whole bunch of Canada that's south of the 49th. In fact, if you check it out, the Canadian city of Windsor is actually south of the American city of Detroit. That's okay. We're Canadians. We're used to sharing. We're used to being in other people's countries, too. The Canadian playwright, author and columnist John McLaughlin Gray, who, by the way, lives in Point Roberts, which is an American enclave surrounded by Canadian territory. John McLaughlin Gray once wrote that a Canadian never feels more like a Canadian than when he or she is traveling in the United States. And he wrote that before 9/11. I know what he means, but I also know that the feeling can wash over you in other foreign climes as well. For me, it happened in an English gymnasium in London. About 30 years ago now. I was playing a game of pickup basketball with a whole bunch of Cockneys, and it was great. Because even then in my so-called prime, I was a lousy basketball player. But the Brits were even lousier. They'd only seen the game on the telly. So it's had a lot of fun. We were making up our own rules and breaking a lot of the real ones as we went along. And then 2 guys show up on the court. Brush cuts. Clint Eastwood mouths, lean, tall. Within seconds, one of them had snatched the ball, pivoted, bowled his way to the net, and slam dunked the ball, bowling over 2 little British guys in the process. "Hey, come on, you guys," I protested. "It's only a game." The guy who'd got the basket turned his steely blue American eyes on me and chanted his personal mantra. "Where I come from, we say, go big or go home." Well, the game was effectively wrecked. The rest of us didn't want to. In fact, we couldn't play that seriously. The 2 Americans, after sinking a couple more baskets, got the message and left the court shaking their heads. I guess off to look for some real competition in this puissant little burg called London. The Americans were disgusted. The Cockneys were mystified. I merely felt Canadian. Sure, little Bucky Beaver back in my hero of wood, drawer of water, and don't rock the boat mode. You know, it's a cliche, but it is true. We Canadians are, beside our American cousins, a placid, accommodating flock. The American Declaration of Independence demands life, liberty, pursuit of happiness. Canadians opted for peace, order, and good government. Well, 2 out of 3 ain't bad. Make no mistake, Canadians can rattle the windows and kick out the jams when we absolutely must, but we strive to keep such behavior confined to hockey arenas and Normandy beaches. It's more orderly that way. A British friend of mine once asked me why Canada was even still around, why it existed. He said, "You're so polite, you're so diffident, you're so self-effacing." He said, "And Americans are so aggressive and acquisitive. I don't understand why you Canucks haven't simply been absorbed." And I didn't really have a great answer for him. God knows we haven't survived through wiliness or super patriotism. I think I finally mumbled something about Canucks being a quietly stubborn bunch. And I might have been right about that. I offer as proof a transcript of a radio conversation between an American naval vessel and a Canadian mariner that was monitored off the coast of Newfoundland last fall. The transcript reads like this. American ship's radio. "This is the bridge of the USS Stalwart, bearing 245 degrees east-northeast at 18 knots. Request you divert your course 15 degrees north to avoid collision. Over." Canadian radio. "Well, now, I recommend you divert your course 15 degrees north." American ship's radio. "This is the captain of a large naval vessel in the United States Navy. I say again, divert your course. Over." Canadian radio. "No, I say again, you best divert your course, my son." American ship's radio. "This is the USS Stalwart. We are an aircraft carrier in the U.S. Navy. We are a large, fully active warship. Divert your course now. Over." Canadian radio. "Well, sir, this here's the lighthouse at Come By Chance. Your call." I love Newfoundland. But I'm pretty indiscriminate. I love most islands. After all, Canada, for all its continental vastness, is a country of islands. We have Prince Edward Island, we have the Thousand Islands, Manitoulin Island, Haida Gwaii, Gordon Lightfoot's Christian Island. I come from Salt Spring Island, which is one of the many Gulf islands that freckle the face of this island. Vancouver, one of Canada's larger islands. And Vancouver, of course, is home to Sidney, which is hosting this convention, and to Elizabeth May, although her roots trail back to the far side of the country, to Cape Breton Island. Elizabeth May, dubbed Canada's hardest working politician. Mind you, she should cut her workload in half and still hold that title. But Elizabeth May, who is herself an island of sanity and intelligence in the uncharted swamps of Canadian political life. Elizabeth May, who was born in Connecticut but chose to move to Canada and who embodies the best qualities of both cultures. She's as feisty as any Yankee, but she always remembers her manners. When yahoos and know-nothings in the House of Commons heckle her, she doesn't join them in the mud. She simply stops speaking. She's a class act and a Canadian through and through. Obama's slogan is, "Yes, we can." We Canucks, we're more polite. We say, "Yes, we may." Elizabeth May.